The sun had gone down over Kwarin Town, and nightlife had begun. At the junction where the dusty road met the tarred highway, a familiar glow always drew people like moths to a flame. It was the fire from Musa's Suya stand. The air was alive with the crackling sound of meat roasting, the smoke rising in gentle swirls, carrying a smell that made mouths water from far away. By this time, every evening, villagers and travelers gathered around, laughing, chatting, and waiting for their turn. Musa was not just any aboki, he was the aboki of Suya. Tall, quiet, and always with a polite nod, he worked the fire with skill. The way he cut the meat, spiced it, and fanned the flames made people admire him. "Ah, Musa, your Suya not the sweetest in this world," one man shouted. Licking his oily fingers, another customer added, "Forget all those other abokis. Their own no day reach your own." Now only Yui Day trust it was true. In Kwarin Town, nobody wanted Suya from any other stand. Even when strangers opened new Suya joints, customers still trooped back to Musa's spot. Other abokis would complain, "Why didn't no go try our own?" Not the same meat we day use, but the villagers only left leave that talk. Musa's own get different taste, even visitors noticed it. Sometimes traders from the market or even rich men from the city would stop by and ask him directly, "Musa, where do you buy your meat? What is your secret?" But Musa never answered. He would just smile quietly, shake his head, and continue slicing the meat. What puzzled everyone more was that nobody had ever seen Musa at the slaughterhouse. Other abokis used to line up there in the morning, bargaining with butchers and carrying heavy chunks of beef to their stands. But Musa never, wallahi. "I have never seen that man buy cow meat," one of his fellow abokis swore one day. "Me too." Another agreed. "Every morning, I day for slaughter." No sign of him. Yet by evening, his table full of meat. How they whispered among themselves, but none could explain it. Some thought maybe he had a private supplier. Others said maybe he brought his cows from the north. But the mystery remained. Meanwhile, Musa's business kept booming. His Suya was soft, juicy, and sweet in a way no one could describe. People would travel from nearby villages just to buy it. Children sang songs about him. Women saved money to buy from his stand on Fridays. Musa had become more than just a Suya seller. He was an unquestioned part of village life. But hidden beneath his quiet smile and smoky grill was a darkness no one had imagined. A darkness that was already swallowing lives one by one every evening. As the orange glow of sunset faded into darkness, Musa's stand became the heartbeat of Kwarin Town. From far and near, people trooped in. Young men returning from work, mothers holding their children, and groups of friends laughing loudly as they waited. By nightfall, the roadside would be filled with a long queue stretching almost to the next street for many villagers. Musa's Suya was no longer just food, it had become an addiction. Some people couldn't even pass the junction without buying a stick. Others admitted they couldn't sleep well if they didn't eat his Suya at least twice a week. Women would save coins all week just to afford Musa's special mix on Fridays. The craze spread into relationships too. Some girls began to measure their boyfriends by whether or not they bought Suya from Musa. "Ah, Chinadu, you passed Musa's stand and you know buy me Suya. What kind of boyfriend are you?" One girl shouted. At her man it became so serious that stories went around. Some girls broke up with their boyfriends simply because they refused to stand in the long queue for Musa's Suya. Others even agreed to date a man only because he promised to spoil them with it. In the evenings, the place was like a festival. Laughter, chatter, and the smell of spice filled the air. The fire crackled, the meat sizzled, and Musa worked silently, fanning the flames as he served one customer after another. The other abokis watched in frustration. Their stands were empty while Musa's was overflowing with people. They could not understand it. Why is everybody running to him?" one muttered angrily. Another shook his head. "Even if I sell cheaper, they still won't come." Wallahi, this thing no pure, but the villagers did not care. For them, Musa's Suya was the sweetest blessing their town had ever known. Little did they know that behind the taste they loved so much, something unspeakable was hiding something that would soon turn their joy into screams. Even marriages were not spared from the craze. Some women began to warn their husbands before they left for work in the morning. Don't come back without Musa's Suya. If you forget, you will not sleep well in this house tonight at first. The men laughed, but soon it became serious. Husbands who returned home empty-handed faced quarrels that shook the compound. Some women refused to serve dinner if Musa's Suya wasn't on the table. Neighbors whispered about one couple whose fights grew so bitter that the wife packed her things to her mother's house, all because her husband came home 3 nights in a row without stopping at Musa's stand in another compound. A man confessed to his friends, "My wife no even ask me how work go. The first thing she day ask me where is Musa's Suya if I no bring am. Wahala go start immediately." The Suya was no longer just food. It was controlling love, peace, and even the happiness of homes every evening. The scene was the same, the flicker of fire, the sound of sizzling meat, the long queues stretching under the moonlight. Women saved money in secret. Children sneaked coins from their parents. And men bowed to pressure, all for Musa's Suya. And through it all, Malam Musa remained the same, quiet, smiling faintly, never saying much, never revealing where his meat came from. The other abokis grew restless. The more they failed, the more suspicious they became. Something no day right, one muttered. Another nodded slowly. Wallahi, this man gets secret way he no fit tell anybody. But the villagers were blinded by taste. They did not want to hear any bad story about Musa. For them, his Suya was pure joy. If only they knew, if only they understood what their tongues were truly enjoying. The night was coming when all secrets would break loose. But in the middle of all the madness, not everyone joined the rush. There were some villagers who never once bought Musa's Suya. Rather, they will go and patronize, order a boki. They would pass his stand and shake their heads, refusing to join the crowd. Haba, see, as everybody day rushed that Suya. One young girl muttered, "I no go ever buy he Co. When I nor know where he for day buy meat. I nor even like he way self. I nor want eat waiting. I nor no abig. Oh, my grandmama still day alive. I nor one die young, even though person by giving me I nor go chop." Another person say, "Now him see a sweet pass for this village, but my spirit no agree something day wrong." Another villager laughed bitterly. "You don't ever see Musa beg for meat at the slaughter before. You don't ever see am carry cow from market? Every aboki day by Opally, except him. No, only God know where he day get he own from." Some even whispered in corners that juju must be involved. If e no be juju, how one man go sell pass all the other abokis for this village? Why e be say no only his Suya day sweet like honey? But anytime they tried to warn others, people only laughed at them. Abeg, leave story you know see as the Suya day melt for mouth. Juju or no juju, we go chop am. The few who stayed away held firmly to their faith. Na God day protect us. One woman told her children, even if the whole village day rush there, we nor go join. That man smiled too much. But my heart nor rest anytime I pass am. Their voices were like whispers in the wind, drowned by the laughter, chatter, and chewing at Musa's stand. Every evening the crowd kept growing. The queue stretched longer, and the smoke from his fire rose higher into the sky. But the warnings were real, and very soon the truth would prove them right. Even as the evenings grew livelier at Musa's stand, not everyone's heart was at peace. The queue was always long, children clutching their coins, women bargaining, men standing with friends while the smell of spice filled the air. The fire crackled, the knife sliced, and Musa's quiet smile never left his face. But behind the laughter, whispers had started to spread. "Tell me, have you ever seen this Musa buy meat at the slaughter?" One man asked quietly as they waited in line. Another shook his head, "Never." And I have been going to that slaughter for years. I have seen some other aboki at the slaughter, but for this man I have never seen him. Buy meat from there if it is not juju. Then what is it? Some villagers laughed it off, but others could not ignore the nagging thought. How can only one aboki feed half the town every night even? The biggest butcher cannot keep up like that still. The taste of the suya silenced every doubt. No matter the whispers, people returned, their mouths watering before they even reached the stand. Yet a few remained firm. Old Mama Ijeoma, who had lived long enough to trust her instincts, would hiss whenever she passed by, all of you should open your eyes. This man's fire is not ordinary fire. I don't know what he's roasting, but my spirit tells me to stay far. Her grandchildren begged her to try it, but she refused. I have seen too much in this life. Sometimes sweetness hides bitterness inside. Watch, one day truth will come out, and though many laughed at her, her words stayed in their hearts. The village carried on. Night after night, the crowd grew, and the smoke from Musa's stand rose high into the starry sky. But under that smoke, under that quiet smile, a secret waited, a secret darker than anyone dared to imagine. They always said Musa never sold on Mondays and Tuesdays. People joked about it. Maybe he rested, maybe he traveled. No one asked. No one wanted to know. The suya was there every other night, the fire, the spice, the long queue. That was enough, but the truth was farther away from the town than anyone imagined. On a wet Monday night, a bus cut across the Lagos road, full of travelers heading north. Among them was a soldier, tired from duty and dozing on the window seat. He was not the kind of man to sleep without care. He kept his phone and his head steady. And when he sat up at a red light, he noticed a man waving at the road. Musa's face in the dim lamp. The same polite smile. Everyone knew. The soldier's eyes narrowed. Something in his chest told him to watch. He slipped his hand into his jacket, switched on a tiny tracker he kept for his kit, and tucked the phone deep in his bag. If trouble came, he would know where to find them. That night the bus pulled over under a thin crescent moon. Men in rough clothes stepped out of the shadows and talked with two travelers in low voices. The soldier saw them reach into the bus. The light flashed cold, and he knew at once it was not a mere roadside quarrel. Instinct took over. He tapped the tracker and sent the location to his unit. By dawn, the soldiers and police were moving quiet, fast, and together. They traced the signal down winding tracks off the Lagos road into the bush. There, in a clearing far from Kwarin Town, they found the camp, ropes, empty bags, and the smell of burnt fire hanging low in the morning mist. The travelers were there, bound and terrified. Shaken but alive nearby, hidden under leaves, were signs of what had been done to supply the market crates. Knives and sacks of meat that did not come from any slaughterhouse, the soldiers knew. At the center of it all stood Malam Musa. They took him without drama. When the soldier stepped forward and showed the tracker on his phone, Musa's shoulders sagged as if a great weight had finally been put down. He did not run. He did not scream. For the first time, the quiet smile left his face. Back in Kwarin Town, the word spread like lightning. By mid-morning, people had gathered at the junction where Musa's stand once burned bright. Faces that had laughed and licked fingers the week before were pinched with fury, disbelief, and fear. Mothers clutched their children. Men who'd once jockeyed for a place in Musa's queue stood silent. The soldiers brought Musa into the square and read the charges in a voice that did not shake. Kidnapping, assault, and worse than anything the villagers could imagine, the selling of travelers, bodies as meat to feed the very town that had trusted him. The words landed like stones. At first there was chaos. People cried. Some vomited where they stood. A woman pointed at the soldier's phone and screamed. I ate from his hand last night. Another fell to her knees and wept softly. My brother traveled on Monday. He did not call me since. Old Mama Ijeoma, who had always warned the crowd, stood with her head bowed and did not say a word. Her eyes were dry and hard. A mob rose then, raw and furious, voices choking with betrayal. For a second, it felt as if the town would take the law into its own hands. But the soldier stepped forward and held up his hand. "No," he said, "steady, give us the man. Let the law take care of him." The police formed a line. Emotions were high, but the trained men prevented a lynching that would have turned the village into something worse than what had been done in the bush. Under questioning, Musa's confession came out like a slow, ugly flood. He spoke in a flat voice that betrayed nothing until he could betray everything. How he and a small gang had waylaid travelers on Mondays and Tuesdays, dragged them into the bush, and sold the body's meat to traders who never asked questions. He had always kept his hands clean in the daylight, the cooking, the serving, the few polite words, and let others do the terrible work. He named roads, the men who helped him, and the secret places where the trucks lifted the sacks to market. He did not look at the people he had fed. Perhaps the silence between mouthfuls had been easier for him to bear then. Looking into someone's eyes. When his confession reached the ears of the crowd, it was as if the sky had cracked. Women threw up. Men who had bragged about Musa's Suya wiped their mouths and refused to meet one another's gaze. Children were hurried home. The Suya sticks that lay on a few leftover trays were thrown away and set alight. The very place that had brought comfort now smelled of accusation. Justice moved away. The law knows how to move clumsy and certain. Musa and the gang were taken into custody, transferred to the city, and charged. The soldiers who saved the travelers stayed to give testimony. The town elders held an emergency meeting. They vowed never again to hide from questions they found difficult or answers they feared. The aftermath was a slow, awkward healing. People stopped buying roadside Suya for a long time. Some could not bear the thought ever again. Others, ashamed, tried to make things right. They went to the victims' families, apologized, and gave what money they could. A few Abokis, shamed by how easily the crowd had turned away from them, put up signs saying they sourced their meat openly from the slaughter and welcomed anyone to come with them in the mornings. Mama Ijeema's warning took new shape in daily life. Households that once relied on the quick comfort of roadside sticks began to cook at home. More to cook together. A woman in the market bought an electric air fryer. She bragged about how safe and clean she could make suya now, without smoke, without the unknown. Children still longed for the old flavor, but the taste had changed. Even the memory of spice came with a shadow months later. When the trial ended and the city courts handed down the sentence, Kwarin Town tried to close a wound that felt too raw for time alone. They learned to ask questions. Where once a good smile ended suspicion, now a handshake might come with a nod toward transparency. Receipts from the slaughterhouse, names of suppliers, a morning visit to the butcher. People began to value truth the way they had once valued Musa's flavor, carefully, deliberately, and without taking it for granted. On quiet nights, the junction was still lit by a small lantern, but the fire that had once leapt from Musa's grill never returned. When a traveler told a story and named that smell of suya that used to float to the sky, someone would answer with a hard, careful laugh and say, "We learned the hard way. Taste must never be stronger than truth." And somewhere far from the town, the memory of that polite, quiet smile remained like a warning, a little hush at the back of the throat whenever spice met air, reminding everyone that things that taste sweet are not always food for the soul. That is how Musa's secret finally came out. For years, sweet suya covered the bitterness of blood. But no matter how long the night is, the day must surely break. This story teaches us one thing: do not let appetite blind your eyes. What tastes sweet today may turn bitter tomorrow. Not every smiling face is pure, and not every hand that feeds you is clean. Be watchful, be careful, and always trust your spirit, because sometimes the food that fills your stomach may be the very thing that destroys your soul. That is how Musa's secret finally came out. For years, sweet suya covered the bitterness of blood. But no matter how long the night is, the day must surely break. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe so that you will get notified anytime we post a new video.